there's two here. There's more. These are, you know.
The most maddening part of all
2 months ago. And seems to be her. I don't know why. From 4 months ago. So I thought that might be fun, just to know where people's heads are at. I just apparently feel like being mad. I don't know. Yeah, let's talk about this. Because again, this is like where some people's heads are at. Oh, there was a paragraph sent in the chat. What happened? Oh, hey. Okay. Okay. Let's subject myself to this.
that, though, is that these policies, they're not just destroying lives. They're rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after...
Oh, let's start by looking at who he is. Okay, Tom Harris. Oh, he has a Dismog page. How lucky of him. Okay, so he has a background, a master's in mechanical engineering. He's the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition, which is a group of climate change skeptics that receive funding from the Heartland Institute. Cool. Before starting work at ICSC, Harris was the executive director of the now defunct Natural Resources Stewardship Project. Prior to working with the NRSP, Harris was a former director of operations at the Canadian PR and lobbying firm called High Park Group. According to Harris's archived profile of ACCO Worldwide, specifically, he has worked with oil and gas, coal, nuclear, environmental, and aerospace clients for whom he has conducted effective media and public relations campaigns. His profile also highlights how he has worked with private companies and trade associations to successfully position these entities and their interests with media and before various government committees and regulatory bodies. Cool. Okay, so that's him. Oh, this is the core principles. Okay, hold on, guys. This is the core principles for the International Climate Science Coalition, which is, again, partially at least funded. Is it partially or fully? A group of climate scientists has received funding from the Heartland Institute, which is like fossil fuel. So it's not an institute, for clarification. So this is what they believe. Global climate is always changing in accordance with natural causes, and recent changes are not unusual. Science is rapidly evolving away from the view that humanity's emissions with carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases are a cause of dangerous climate change. Away? Away? Climate models used by the IPCC failed to reproduce known past climates without manipulation and therefore lack the scientific integrity needed for use in climate prediction and related policy decision-making. The UN IPCC summary for policymakers and the assertions of IPCC executives too often seriously misrepresent the conclusions of their own scientific reports. These are, by the way, again, internationally independent, unpaid scientists that are making these reports. Like, okay. I mean, I guess the executives are paid, but like, they're the people that write the IPCC reports don't even get paid to do this. Like, yeah. Claims that consensus existing around climate experts regarding the causes of the modest warming of past centuries are contradicted by thousands of independent scientists. Except it's corroborated by thousands of independent scientists. Carbon dioxide is not a pollutant. It is a necessary reactant in plant photosynthesis and so is essential for life on Earth. Research identifies the sun as a major driver of global climate change must be taken more seriously. Global cooling has presented serious problems for human society and the environment throughout history, while global warming has generally been highly beneficial. It's not possible to reliably predict how climate will change in the future beyond the certainty that multi-decadal warming and cooling trends and abrupt changes will all continue, underscoring the need for effective adaptation. And since science and observation have failed to substantiate the human-caused climate change hypothesis, this is premature to damage national economies with carbon taxes, emissions trading, or other schemes to control greenhouse gas emissions. So that is the view for climate science on that. And then they also have a view on energy. Is anyone still with me? But this is the guy that Fox News just had on 2 months ago? 2 months ago. Carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gas emissions from human activity, energy production, transportation, cement production, heating and cooling, etc., appear to have only a very small impact on global climate. So-called new renewable energy technologies are extremely expensive and rely on huge subsidies. To use such intermittent and diffuse power sources requires that the consumer pays between 3 and 10 times the price of power from conventional sources, i.e. coal, oil, natural gas, hydro, and nuclear. Which, by the way, you all know this is complete bullshit, right? Like, you know that clean energy is actually the cheapest form of energy available, and it has less subsidies than coal, oil, natural gas. I don't know about hydro and nuclear. Nuclear probably has less than nuclear. But yeah, no. So that's just not true. And also, coal would only be is only existing because of subsidies. But, regardless, it is not currently possible to safely replace a significant fraction of our conventional energy supply with alternative energy sources such as wind, solar, and most biofuels. Interesting, they're also anti-biofuels. New renewable energy technologies have only a minimal effect on carbon dioxide emissions because none of them can be relied upon to be available when needed. Therefore, conventional fossil fuel power stations must be kept on standby in case the wind drops or a cloud passes over the sun. I heard we will now be taking a break from reality for a word from our sponsor in the Upside Down universe. Yeah. That's pretty much what was said. That's pretty much what I've been saying in the last 5 minutes. Yes. Yeah, so we're almost to that person speaking. And yeah, so bottom line, cloud passes over the sun, the usual. And this leads to additional emissions of carbon dioxide that to an extent offset the reduction made by renewable energy technology. That's just false. If you're just running the fossil fuel technology less, that's no. And energy independence is not a good reason for promoting new renewable energy technologies. Energy independence is more easily and much more cheaply attained by exploiting abundant natural fossil fuel reserves and spending some of the wealth created on research into potential new energy technologies. So that, of course, people, they love to use energy independence as a main statement just for fossil fuels. That's where that comes from. And it's not more cheap. And fossil fuels are a finite resource. So, and also fossil fuel companies prefer to just export them or export the product instead. So with all that being said, now let's actually listen to what he has to say.
The science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will
is that these policies, they're not just destroying lives. They're rooted in lies, all of them. Our next guest was once a climate alarmist, but now says the entire movement is, quote, a scam. Tom Harris is the executive director of the International Climate Science Coalition. He joins me now. Tom, good to see you tonight. Now, you actually say the only way to get rid of this is to go after the science of climate change. Explain.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of people will say, well, Canada, for example, puts out so little greenhouse gas emissions that we shouldn't actually try to reduce it because China is double the United States. Well, the trouble is people argue that, well, yes, but we have to set an example to the world and we have to be good citizens and all that sort of thing. So they're using these arguments quite often that China's doubled the emissions of the U.S., et cetera. But
That's so funny because I feel like that argument is usually used in the case of Americans shouldn't do anything. Because anyone that for us doing something talks about the historic emissions, which is way more than China has produced over history. So,
But the real underlying thing is that there is no climate crisis. I was originally an aerospace engineer, and I would give
guys, did you hear it? There isn't one. Okay, packing it up. It was a good show, guys. Thank you for being here. Like, subscribe.
speeches and I wrote articles. I wrote one in the Ottawa Citizen about comparative planetology, how studying the planets helps us understand the Earth better. And I used the example of the runaway greenhouse effect on Venus. I said, this could happen on the Earth if we don't reduce carbon dioxide. Well, a local professor at Carleton University, professor of geology, he liked my article so much he used it in his course on climate change. And
hey, what's up, Eco Resto Dragon? How's it going? We're subjecting ourselves to Fox News for a fun Friday. So, yeah, we're listening to this guy from the International Climate Science Coalition, which is basically a made-up group funded by fossil fuel companies to tell people of the lovely Fox News channel that there is no climate crisis. So that's what we're up to.
But he said to the students, but that part about Venus is wrong. What happened on Venus cannot physically happen on the Earth, and he explained why. Now, I thought, who is this climate change denier? Well, he invited me into his lab, and he showed me the geologic history that he and others are finding, and they found no consistent correlation between carbon dioxide and Earth's temperature. At times,
But okay, here's the thing. Maybe every kid in science class be just simply told to do the lesson of just exhaling into a container and then having a container with just regular air next to it and putting them next to each other in the sunshine and seeing which one has a higher temperature. Because you can do that. That's what Eunice Newton-Foote did in the 1800s when she was the first person to determine that carbon dioxide increase in the atmosphere would result in higher global temperatures. That's literally what she did. But for sure, there is some random regional professor that has convinced a climate scientist, who is, by the way, a mechanical engineer, that his perspective was wrong the whole time. This climate scientist had that much knowledge about the topic that he could be swayed that easily? Like, come on. That's just so not even convincing.
CO2 was 1,300% of today, and we were stuck in very cold conditions. So it was all over the board. So I started wondering, well, maybe he's right. He exposed me to a lot of people who actually showed me that there are thousands of scientists. And here's a book actually that illustrates that. It's called Climate Change Reconsidered. And this is on climatechangereconsidered.org. There are thousands of references here which talk about the fact that there is no foundation to the climate scare. It's all based on models that don't work.
If you guys give me 10 new subscribers, I will review that book for you.
But Tom, when you hear
maybe more,
politicos especially, but not just the politicos, celebrities, it's settled some.
Actually, be on the website, so it'd be free, but still, I would need at least 10 more subscribers to review that. So get on it.
Science is settled. Is science ever settled, really? I mean, except over time where you really, what is H2O? We know what H2O is, right? We understand that. But is this science settled really quickly?
No, in fact, it's a very immature science. In fact, we don't even know whether it's going to warm or cool in the future. Various people who study the sun, for example, Dr. Patterson, they show that we're headed into a grand solar minimum around 2060, and that we'll see gradual cooling over the next few decades. So the bottom line is we have no clue what's going to really.
But you know what? It's so convenient because I will 100% be dead by then. And you might be too. It's like, That's like bank execs promising something in the future relating to like climate reduction, and then just the exact like getting out of the position, and the new one comes in and they're like, oh well, we didn't make that promise. So it's like, okay, great, cool, let's just ignore like the hundreds of years of science on this topic because it's just really new, guys.
Happen. So the only sensible approach is to get ready for it, to make our...
Honestly, it's not about energy storage capabilities of CO2 in the atmosphere. It's about the rapidly changing atmospheric chemistry, which allows the oceans to store more energy. Will very much impact all the developed civilizations. That is true. That is true. But when it comes to like a very basic understanding of whether or not something is taking place in the first place, you got to dumb it down even more than that. But that's true.
Infrastructure hardened to use solid, dependable sources of energy like coal. This is a piece of coal from eastern Kentucky. And not to turn off our solid, reliable energy sources for flimsy wind and solar power. You'd laugh. It's appropriate that I'm...
Wait, so you're telling me the guy who is the chairman of the Center of Study of Carbon Dioxide and Global Change, which is funded by fossil fuel companies, co-authored a book telling us that climate change is not actually real? I know. We're talking full on shocked Pikachu face. Good, clean coal, yes, and yes. All right.
Based here in Ottawa, because right now here in Ottawa, Canada, they're running a municipal...
Maple, this one's yours. Maple, this one's yours. This is a Canadian.
And it is the most corrupt election I have ever seen. God. They are trying their best to bring in a climate alarmist as mayor. So guess who they put in charge of the 4 debates they've had? Climate activists. They have climate activists running the mayor's debate.
Professor, it doesn't surprise me that this is happening in Canada. It's happening in the United States, and we need real facts to discern what the real truth is here. Professor, thank you for this invaluable...
So you're saying that climate change isn't real and the elections are stolen? My God, there's nothing sacred anymore. I don't know what to believe exactly. So yeah, if you have any more of those, though, please send it to me because I'm happy to react to these things.
This is Ingraham from Washington tonight. The climate controls. That's the focus of tonight's angle.
You just gotta love their graphics. My goodness, these people, they just work so hard. Not saving us, but it's energy dense enough to start quieting the we need more fossil fuel people. That's fair.
Now, all the enlightened people, you know who they are, they now insist that summer is no longer supposed to be hot. So any heat...
I think it's appropriate that the blonde chick on Fox is arguing against climate change and is for some reason that's talking about it on Fox News, because this blonde chick then can react to that blonde chick. So that seems pretty yin-yang. And then you need people who trust you to run and not be neglectful, corruption. That's not even to mention the optics of having nuclear plants anywhere near the province with, think of the children, NIMBYs. Yeah. That's a problem for other energy sources too. I would say all the climate refugees could move to Ben's house, but I don't think Jim Henson would be happy with such overcrowding in the Muppet house. That's terrible.
Heat wave anywhere by its very existence is evidence of climate change. So they're all reading from the same playbook, with the end game more obvious by the day.
They're reading from the same playing book. Mm-hmm.
Climate propaganda, it's saturating the airwaves.
Yes, it's summer. Yes, it's supposed to be hot, but it has never been like this. Dallas and Oklahoma City reached 109 degrees today. Again, this is a global problem. Just look at the heat map. Mexico, Central America. This heat devastation is evidence, as if you need more of it, that climate change is here and is a crisis. What scientists and activists have been warning about for decades.
Fox versus CNN.
We knew these temperatures were coming. We might not have known 2022, but we knew they were coming.
Was that guy a PhD? I think he writes for the New York Times. I don't know. But remember, they never have to establish actual facts. It's all kind of, I don't know, just a feeling.
We are feeling it. We're literally feeling it. We are enduring the effects of...
Oh my gosh, at first, it was only studies. And they were like, oh, but we're not feeling anything. Now we're feeling it. But oh, therefore there's no data. Stop. The country of Iran is supposed to be mostly unlivable by humans by mid-century, yeah. And some parts of Africa too.
Of climate change.
Feeling it. Of course, the truth about global warming is never as simple as they claim. So showing this really scary looking temperature map with a bunch of red on it ignores another expert analysis. The worst heat waves on our planet aren't happening now. They actually occurred 40 years ago, according to a review by researchers from the University of Bristol in the United Kingdom. We show there have been some even greater extremes in the last few decades, said Vicki Thompson, a climate scientist at the University of Bristol and lead author of this new paper. And notice, by the way, that the climate controls wailing about how this is the worst heat wave ever don't acknowledge what happened in Europe almost two decades ago. 35,000 people died because of what? Extreme heat. Yet the left and its media allies, they want strict government controls on how business operates and eventually on how we as free citizens live. So it's just more fodder for liberals to call for the Senate to be abolished.
Yes, when coal and oil were peak use. Yeah, exactly.
As this writer for the New York Times argued today. Because they blather on about extreme heat? Oh, how about their extreme solutions? Like blowing up the Constitution so they can sidestep the red states altogether, or force Americans out of their cars, the cars that they love, into cars they don't want and can't afford.
Oh, you mean because they're required to have cars because we haven't, created public transportation infrastructure? Right.
Which brings us to the beaver cleaver of the Biden cabinet, Mayor Pete. Today,
I never hear about Mayor Pete, ever. It's so funny that she's bringing him up, though.
He made an admission about high gas prices.
Of course, the more pain we are all experiencing from the high price of gas, the more benefit there is for those who can access electric vehicles.
Never has the worth of a Rhodes Scholarship been so called into question. He apparently hadn't ever pondered the obvious question. So if everyone switches to EVs, what happens to the grid? Congressman Tom Massey schooled little Pete.
I'm really alarmed at sort of the naivete of those who are promoting rapid adoption of these technologies with our existing infrastructure. Over the course of a year, an American household would use 25 times as much electricity for their electric car as they would for their refrigerator. Do you think it would strain the grid if everybody plugged in 25 refrigerators in every household?
Well, if we didn't make any upgrades to the grid, sure. I mean, if we had yesterday's grid with tomorrow's cars, it's not going to work.
Literally, Biden has the dumbest cabinet.
Literally, that's true, though. That's why they passed the infrastructure bill and the Inflation Reduction Act and and that's why we need the grid more. Yeah. Does she think that we're just going to keep our old grid but update the cars and that's it?
In U.S. history, zero common sense.
If that average household plugged in electric cars, do you know how much more electricity they would use in comparison to the air conditioning that air conditions their whole house?
No, but again, I would emphasize it
would take 4 times as much electricity to charge the average household's cars as the average household uses on air conditioning.
Now, air conditioning, that's another thing on the climate controls chopping block. These passive men think that you should be happy with passive cooling.
I mean, if you actually, prioritized things like insulating your home and, windows and other energy efficiency measures that would also result in more active heating and cooling homes, then you wouldn't need as much air conditioning, which then would result in you having more energy to spend on electric vehicles, say. But also the fun fact that electric vehicles can also be backup batteries for your home in case of a disaster. Like, let's not even go there, like, come on. Also, they would be saving money for not paying gas. So if that's where she's going, there's also that argument too. Literally, they have the dumbest anchors so much. I mean, this would be incredible, truly. But one thing, climate scientists don't measure warming by heat waves. They measure it by average temperature increases. Also true. She should wrap her text for maximum effect. I feel like, okay, sorry, one sec. Okay. Now I feel better. That way, because I really like our chat. Okay. And of course, we'll actually listen to the authors of the cited paper. The Western North America heat wave will be remembered because of its widespread devastation. However, the study exposes several great meteorological extremes in recent decades, some of which went largely under the radar, likely due to their occurrence in more deprived countries. Fascinating. Okay. Yeah. See, there's a little more context. I knew there would be. And EVs are not driving 24/7 like the refrigerators and ACs. That's also a good point. Co-author Professor Dan Mitchell, Professor of Climate Science at the University of Bristol, thank you for checking on this. I appreciate you. Said climate change is one of the greatest global health problems of our time, and we have shown that many heat waves outside of developed worlds have gone largely unnoticed. The country level burden of heat on mortality can be in the thousands of deaths, and countries with experienced temperatures outside their normal range are the most susceptible to these shocks. Yes, that is a beautiful quote. Thank you. That's so true. And that's something that's totally missed by these people that claim to care. And maybe if it wasn't getting hotter, she wouldn't need air conditioning. Also true. See that positive feedback loop? It's almost like we're getting at the root of the issue here. A bunch of people living in a single family house in suburban sprawl is horrible for energy efficiency. It's way easier to cool 50 families in a building than 50 individual houses with 50 individual families. True. No one will charge their EVs during the day either. I mean, yeah, also EVs can be charged at like your place of work too, like, or the gym or the grocery store. Like, there's other locations that you can charge your EVs. It's not just at your house too, which is funny because that was supposed to be a good thing, but they've already turned it into a bad thing.
An assistant professor at the University of Oregon says that passive cooling is so promising because it's less expensive, it averts
Also true, unfortunately.
intensification of urban heat island effects, it increases survivability by diminishing reliance on air conditioning. And forget a return to American energy glut, the independence we enjoyed. CNN's answer to living through a heat wave includes these helpful hints. Close your blinds and sleep in the basement. Got it? Is that what it's come to?
She did really
As we
good
told
job
you last night,
dumb.
lowering your standard of living and your expectations for the future, they are the goals here. This isn't happening by accident. They're inflicting this necessary pain on you. They believe it's necessary. It's a sacrifice you should make. And the list of what the climate trolls demand to take from you to save the planet, that keeps growing. Of course, we also know that, of course, the gas-powered cars, they want that out. They want non-smart thermostats gone. They want to diminish farmland.
Why not?
Beef and other livestock, they want that out. Fertilizer, want to control that.
Yeah.
Generators, they don't like your generators.
Electric
Discretionary travel, no, not so much.
I mean,
leaf blowers, they've always
it.
hated those. Gas
There's electric
ranges
ones now.
and gas
There's
heat.
electric ones now.
All right, you think I'm joking, right, about gas ranges? Well, in
Why would they
dozens
think
of
you're
counties
joking?
on the West Coast, where the climate controls are most influential, they have already banned natural gas in residential homes. And now the nation's capital is set to become the second East Coast city to ban gas boilers and water heaters. Now, this is absolute madness.
Exactly.
It's going to drive up the cost of home heating for those who can least afford it. But of course,
no, because gas is a super high price. You know when you complain about gas prices and then in the same breath, then you also complain that electrification has higher prices. Pick one.
The trolls, they don't care. They never did. They use the voters, then abuse the voters. They're horrible people. They know their climate con is about to unravel and that Americans are just tired of being told to sacrifice as they see China and India doing whatever they damn well please on the climate stuff. Fossil fuels, forget about it. They'll burn them. They don't care. So using fear and
You stream in your basement? Really? That's where you stream? That's funny. You must have your Wi-Fi router down there. Also, you don't have to deal with gas explosions if you ban them from new developments. Yeah, that's not talked about enough. Just like how scary gas can be. Also, gas is known to like emit chemicals into your home even when the appliance isn't on, so it's bad for your health too. Don't have to remind an aging population to check their gas stoves before bed if you burn gas. Exactly. True. Also good one. Gonna have to start making pro-elderly arguments to ban some of these things. That's smart. I like your thinking. That is so smart, though, actually.
intimidation, the trolls want to speed up the transition timeline before the voters have their say in November. So you notice everything suddenly become urgent.
Before the voters have their say in November, well, the voters did have their say. And they didn't side with you.
Everything's an emergency.
The challenge that we're facing globally on climate is real, and we need to take whatever measures we can to accelerate all the work that we're doing to make sure that we can address the climate emergency.
Okay, Dracula, go back in the coffin. What they want is for you to travel less, eat less.
That was such a benign statement that she's now roasting.
Less, buy less, use less heat, use less AC, or not at all. Now, since Congress won't...
You know, I would love for you to not have to use AC through passive heating and reducing global warming. Yes, I would like you to use less AC for those reasons.
Won't pass new climate rules. They had to deal with Joe Manchin, right? They want Biden to declare a climate emergency. That's a move that would give the federal government extraordinary power to take your freedom away, just as they did during COVID.
That's the true catch there. That is the true catch there, Maple, is that everything is so urgent right now because we haven't done anything for 50 years. That's just true. That's why we are in the mess in the first place, because these people have been saying this stuff forever. And now it's much more urgent, and they're still saying it.
Well, in May 2021, The Angle predicted this. Do you think the forces propping up Biden aren't thinking about declaring a climate emergency in some form during his first term?
Oh, look at you.
You haven't been paying close attention. Of course, the lockdowns gave them the perfect roadmap for how to exert control over the population. 14 months ago to the day.
Wow.
Same white dress. No, different white dress. All right, and now Biden's traveling to Massachusetts tomorrow to push the Greeniac agenda. He's throwing a bone to the climate trolls, but he's not going as far as to declare that federal climate emergency, at least not yet. So this issue, it's on the ballot in most every state and federal election across America. A vote for a Democrat is a vote to rob you of your freedom and your prosperity, even your preferred method of heating your home or cooking your food. Because if the climate trolls have their way, we are not going to recognize our country anymore. So don't worry about a heat wave. Worry about their control wave that's going to wipe out what we love most about America. And that's The Angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click.
Oh, that was a beautiful ending. Thank you. Thank you very much, Laura, for that take.